Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to discuss how to identify power players in your deals. Seriously, cannot wait to dig into these. I'm Gina. I'm the Partner Success Manager from Rev Genius, and we are joined today by David, CEO of our incredible partner, Traction Complete, Dan, Regional Vice President, Communications, Media, and Technology at Salesforce, and last but certainly not least, Greg, Manager at GTM Readiness Programs, also from Salesforce. So welcome in, gentlemen. Super excited to have you guys here today. Audience members, please make sure you drop those questions into the Q&A section, which is located right below the chat, and we'll answer them live at the end of the webinar. So with that being said, David, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you take it away from here.
Sounds great. Yeah, thanks, Gina. Hi, everyone. I'm a huge fan of the community that you guys put together with Rev Genius, Gina, and how everyone really comes together to learn from one another in order to really grow their businesses. So hopefully we can contribute something back today. And this topic is very near and dear to my heart, both from running sales teams that are trying to get into complex organizations with lots of different players involved, as well as from trying to deliver products that are really helpful. And today I'm really excited to learn from, like Gina said, not one, but two experts in this space. Dan Kravius, the Regional Vice President of Telco, Media, and Technology, and Greg Miklos, the Manager of Go-to-Market Readiness Programs at Salesforce. So Dan and Greg, thanks so much for joining. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I can go first, Greg. So I just want to say thank you for having me. It's to your point, David. What an amazing community Rev Genius has, and you know, obviously, whatever I can share to help all of you, I welcome that. Dan Karabias, I currently work at Salesforce. I'm a regional vice president that particularly focuses on the comms and media sector. Here inside of Salesforce. I'm part of the professional services arm for Salesforce Professional Services. A little background on myself. If you hear an accent, I was born and raised in Mexico City. I moved to Canada when I was 16 years old. I did all high school, university. And when I finished university, I got a job. My first job was at SAP. I was one of the initial SDRs that handle all incoming inbound for SAP. So shout out to all the SDRs who are out there. It's a great way to obviously get your hands and feet wet in the software world. But did that about so I was at SAP for about 5 years. By the time I ended SAP, I was an account executive that owned the entire bag of the end-to-end SAP suite. But I really wanted to understand a little bit more about what does it take to actually implement the technology. So I joined a small partner that was focused on Salesforce implementations, and I joined when it was in startup mode. We scaled that organization to 1,500 employees to make it a global services organization. And ultimately, it ended with the acquisition of this company by Salesforce. So yeah, it's been an amazing ride. Lots of learnings, and yeah, I'll pass it over to you, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Also really excited to be able to share what I've learned over the years and how that could be of benefit to you all within the community. Again, my name is Greg Miklos. I have spent my career selling, and it is definitely my passion, but I have shifted my focus from carrying a bag to helping those that carry a bag be better at their craft and growing in their sales journey. So after about 12 years of working within a quota carrying capacity, shifted gears 6 years ago into managing education and enablement programs for sellers of all shapes and sizes, working within a startup capacity similar to Dan, right into multi-thousand employee or international companies like Salesforce. So lots of interesting learnings along the way, and looking forward to sharing what I can today to help everyone that's out there.
That's awesome. Well, guys, thank you for joining. Dan, I love the shout out to the SDRs out there. You're right, that's a tough job. but also a great way to get started. So we're in an interesting time of the year, guys. We're kind of at the beginning, whether you're a January start to the fiscal year or February, if you're at Salesforce like you guys or others, everyone's really just kicking things off in terms of sales. So they're getting their new territories and sinking their feet in. And it's a weird time, right? Now more than ever, there's more people scrutinizing every single deal, more CFOs involved in small deals and whatnot. So it's more important than ever for people to be navigating through and getting to the people who matter. And I think there's stats out there that say something like almost 80%, like 78% of sales reps are only connected to just one person at every deal, but that if they can multi-thread, that they can increase their win rate by like 34%. And yet only like 22% of reps are actually doing it. So that's the topic for today, to try and figure out how to get into these power players. But having said all that, I'd like to actually step back for a minute while we have you guys as experts on the phone. I'd love to maybe start, Greg, with yourself and just learn a little bit more about sales enablement, go-to-market readiness programs, etc., and how you're setting your sales reps up for success and what those best practices look like, just from an enablement standpoint. I apologize if you can hear the dog in the background.
Yeah, I love it. For sure. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Dave. I could talk on this topic for days, as it's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I think I would kind of put this into a couple categories. I think the biggest piece of advice that I could offer folks who are embarking on an enablement journey for their teams is making sure you've got a solid process for onboarding. That'd be number one from my perspective. You want to make sure that those new team members are getting up to speed and dialed in on what you want them to understand and how you want them to show up. And really what I've seen is that by making that investment in those teams or in those individuals, you bring a newfound sense of trust as they're entering the organization, and they feel supported. And by doing that, you're going to see better morale across the team, and they're going to be starting off on the right foot as they're getting into your organization. That'd be the first thing that I would recommend around kind of the enablement front. I have lots of detail we could get into on that front as far as the programs itself, but starting early with that onboarding program is definitely one of the key elements to bringing your team up.
I believe it. Yeah, absolutely. And sorry for the interruption there, guys. He was cheering us on, but I had to let him out. So, okay, when you're bringing people on, what does that tend to look like? What do you recommend from an onboarding process? I think everyone's probably got their own flavor to it. Most are probably putting in at least a day or two, but what's best practice? How long do you tend to spend trying to?
I guess I say that I've seen it all, and it depends on your organization as far as how you want to set things up. But it could vary from straight boot camps over a couple days to a week, or more hands-on type of programs. Myself, I am a big fan of the hands-on programs and making sure that you're spending the right amount of time with people while also not overwhelming them with the education, in addition to managing a territory and learning more about the business. With that, from a timing perspective, I like to see these things take or mirror the amount of time that you're attaching to the ramp of that individual. So if you're assigning a 3-month ramp period, they should be focusing on learning as a good chunk of that time throughout the course of the ramp period. That'd be my recommendation on it.
That's amazing. And so of that time, like, you probably don't keep them out of seat for the entire 3-month time. What does that look like throughout that period? How much time are they putting in versus getting into their actual role and whatnot?
Yeah, in an ideal world, what you're putting in front of them from an enablement perspective is mapping to their day-to-day and what their path is like as they're growing as an individual who's contributing to that organization. So one would be aligning that program to the stage of where they would be if they took on a net new opportunity on day one and kind of growing them through the progression of that opportunity, so that by the end of that ramp period or that enablement, they are in a position where they understand all of the things that are involved in managing that opportunity, who you need to go to, what do you need for approvals, and what sort of information do you need to understand to actually pitch effectively as you're going out into territory. As far as the timing perspective goes, I would recommend between 10 and 20% of the work week being attached to learning in a variety of modalities, whether that's sessions with leaders, sessions with enablement folks, if that's something that you have within your organization, or shadowing with other individuals on the team so that they can get to know what great looks like.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. So about half day to a day a week, shadowing folks, learning content, hearing from execs, that sort of thing. Any other strategies that you might recommend that people don't tend to do in your experience?
I think on that note, you don't want to stop educating people. You don't want to say, okay, boot camp's done. Cool. See you later. Good luck. The trial by fire perspective, I definitely think you need to keep investing in people, because things will change. Processes will change. Your offering is going to change. And the marketplace is also going to change. We've seen that over the last couple of years with some of the challenges that exist out there within the buying environment and the kind of the customer perspective. So I would recommend heavily that you figure out a way that makes sense for your organization to continue to invest in educating those teams, whether it's quarterly meetups, or whether you want to have something more in depth where at a team level you're meeting every month to focus in on a specific topic. I just really encourage everyone to make sure you're continuing to invest in your people as time goes on.
That's awesome. Yeah, and one of the things that I was impressed that you had mentioned to me before that I certainly have never done with our teams before, and perhaps others haven't, was that kind of weekly test or exam or challenge or practice session that you had told me about. Do you mind going into a little bit of detail there?
For sure. Yeah, I think telling people is one thing in terms of education, but actually testing or measuring that education really helps make things resonate with the people. And testing, I guess I should say, what I've seen work best is challenging folks on related things to the things that they're learning. So each week, let's say we're talking about deal qualification. Well, let's have a scenario at the end of the week where we're challenging them with a fictitious simulation where they have to go through a deal qualification and ask the right questions. And that's fun, and it's great to challenge people and see how they react in the moment. But the biggest thing that you need to do to follow that is also provide meaningful feedback. You want to give them a chance to learn from what happened and give them a path to grow as a result. And by doing that over the course of each week in the ramp period and through their onboarding, you can make sure that you're ensuring that they're picking up the content, but you're also getting a finger on the pulse of how they're picking up the content, and if you need to spend more time with that individual to continue to help them grow.
That's awesome. I love that. I was just writing that down, that kind of those weekly pitches, it's great to hear from someone else, but you only really learn once you try it and you fail a couple times. It's probably easier to do that in front of the enablement team than it is doing it in front of a customer.
Much easier. Yeah, you want to fail fast and early in front of in a safe environment before getting out there into the wild.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you, Greg. So, Dan, I mean, I'm guessing, I don't know this, don't let me put words in your mouth, but that, reps come in, they go through this kind of enablement program, they're set up for success, and at some point then are sent over to yourself and others, of course, in roles like yours, but now they're actually getting into that sales role. What does that look like when you take over? How do you set up the teams for success in these reps and get them into the job?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, the first thing that I want to give them is a territory, right? It doesn't do anyone any good when you have a person who's just coming off of the enablement and they don't have a territory where they can sink their teeth in. So the fastest you can actually get them focused and understand how they're getting paid as well. I think that's incredibly important. But the fastest you can get them focused and setting the right expectations, the better for everyone involved, because they're coming in fresh from getting all of this enablement. And if you do not give them something that they can actually action and put it into practice, a lot of this enablement just gets lost, right? So it's about setting the right expectations and really allow them to be successful by giving them exactly the tools that they need to apply what they just recently learned.
I bet. Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's just kind of wasting time if they're sitting there without companies and customers and prospects to go after.
Absolutely.
And so how do you operationalize it? What does that look like? So once they're in seat, they have that territory. How do you go about then helping the sales reps to hit success? What does that look like on kind of a weekly basis?
Yeah. So when a rep gets territory, my expectations is that they understand historical ways, the historical purchase of those particular accounts, digging into the CRM, understanding, when's the last time we actually spoke with the customers, the last time they procured with us. So that just gives them a general sense of the territory from what was done last year. Then I asked them to select, their big bets, right? And those big bets is through, again, that historical understanding of how that customer procured, but really identifying where are the golden nuggets in that particular account list, right? If a company is publicly traded, they can research the 10K, the recent TechQ report, how the organization is performing, where the organization is heading, whether they have ambitious goals to achieve over the next 2 to 3 fiscal years, so that they can start to infer a vision for that particular account, right? How does our product help that particular customer achieve their vision with the solutions that we offer, right? And taking into account any sort of macro factors that are coming into place, whether consumer behavior changes, how the economy is affecting that particular organization, industry trends, and then conduct that account review session, right? And where we select a number of individuals that can provide a feedback and a point of view, and really start a collaborative process on how that particular account is going to be tackled. Also, within that account review session, we want to understand the power players within that particular account, right? Who is really an influencer within the organization, and who is the right person that is going to help move the opportunity along, right? From a standpoint of functional, right? You mentioned the CFO, or the business, if it's a particular need, or the technical side, right? Whether it is the CIO, the chief technology officer, and how do those players really work in collaboration to buy software, right? Because I think Greg mentioned this over the past, last year in particular, but over the past 2 years, the B2B process to buy software has gone more complex, right? It's not just a simple, hey, we've done business with this individual in the past, and that will carry into the new world, right? So I think it's really important not to make assumptions and really understand what individuals really are in seat to help move your opportunity along. So having an understanding of that influence map, it just captures the complexity of how decisions are made in an organization. Just to be a little bit more succinct on that, because titles often can be very misleading. I think it's important just to understand who are the main players that can help navigate your sales cycle effectively. In terms of how do I operationalize this, so this is just more around at an account level. On a weekly basis, myself, I execute two different types of motions in my business. One of them is really like pipeline reviews, in where I schedule a one-to-one with my particular rep, and we just go through the entire pipe of that particular quarter. Typically, the sessions are about 30 minutes long, and this is where I roll up my sleeve as a leader and just collaborate with my rep on what exactly is a customer, what is a customer interested in. What's the solution that we're positioning against a problem or need that they have. Who are we talking to? In what stage of the sales cycle are we in? When are you expecting this opportunity to close? What is the dollar value of that opportunity? What is so I go into so many different aspects of that particular opportunity to start that collaboration, because it is through collaboration that we uncover red flags and potential roadblocks. So that's what I do on a weekly basis with my reps. And then I also host a larger forecast meeting, which is just really to bring accountability and transparency in terms of how we're tracking against the number that we're rolling to the business, and how those opportunities that my reps are actually running, how does that give us the walk up to that particular number that we're looking to achieve. Those meetings are really quick. Well, they're not quick. They're like in an hour long. But in terms of the motion that I go with my rep and the people that are supporting that sales cycle, it's just more through a validation purposes that opportunity sits within the right month and it sits within the right quarter. And if there's any sudden changes that we need to make, we collaborate as a team and find opportunities that can backfill to the number that we're calling.
Nice. Yeah, that's amazing. So that's a lot. I mean, a lot to unpack there too, because I think there's a lot of knowledge there. You mentioned a bunch of stuff, but when you're first kind of talking them through the deals, having them walk through the CRM, recognize the wins that were had in the past and what they've sold and what those big bets are going to be, there's probably a lot of background that the rep's going to need to know on everything, the products, I would imagine, the situations, the people, like you talked about the CFO. Are you guys and maybe this is for you too, Greg, but are you enabling with like who's who and what are the personas that you should be going after, who's traditionally buyers, that sort of thing, so that they're getting some semblance of who to go after? Or maybe not, maybe Salesforce is so big at this point you kind of have everybody under the sun in the CRM already and they don't have to go find other people.
I can take the first stab. At the size of a company like Salesforce, the process has been pretty flushed out in terms of the buying personas and how does each solution within the Salesforce stack aligns to that persona or to that department. Now, it's important not to just make assumptions that particular persona will resonate with the message that the company is syndicating to that person. So I think it's really important to still take a step back and understand, who they are as human beings, who they're connected to. Maybe there's a relationship between a particular person that is within the company that could be applicable for this person to align to. I think their career journeys are super important as well. Understand where they started and where they are today. See if there's similarities in terms of how you can tailor your message. Interest, general web activity. People today are actually quite active on LinkedIn, so it's really interesting just to understand their profile, but understand what they're following, what they're liking. And all of that. So that you can just understand this person's priorities, so that you can tailor your content and communication alongside what the company is giving you, so that you can have more of an impactful result.
Yeah, I'd agree with Dan. I think doing the detective work ahead of time and make sure that you know the folks that you're talking to and being able to build an understanding of the background on that individual is super important. I think I'd also agree with some of the other things Dan's been saying earlier, which is you want to make sure you're investing time to dig in and understand everybody in the organization who's going to be impacted or benefit from the opportunity that you're currently pursuing. So don't hesitate, or pardon me, don't stop at that one contact. If you understand that somebody is going to be the decision maker on that opportunity, you need to continue to dig deeper to understand the rest of the landscape as it pertains to that opportunity.
It's such a great suggestion. I mean, I've certainly seen on our teams too, and how deals can fall through because you're working with one person who is a champion, does want you to succeed, and yet somebody else involved either holds more influence or just doesn't want that person's initiative to go through. Maybe there's competing priorities or whatnot. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. So, Greg, in your mind, when you're going through onboarding, are you guys training for that at all? Is there anything you can do to help prepare the reps for that before they actually get in seat, or is that more up to the sales leaders?
I think it's a bit of both. There's only so much information we're going to be able to unload on people in the course of the kind of onboarding and continued education programs that you'll put in place for the learners. But like important things to encourage people to do is like do that detective work. Here are some tools that you can do to go and look into that. Like LinkedIn is a fantastic resource. If you want to pull out additional pieces to understand the organization, you can go to the World Economic Forums. You can go to YouTube, 10Ks, 10Qs. You can even ask ChatGPT to give you an understanding of what industry trends have happened over the last 3 years in that particular industry. Right? You can build a really good point of view before you go into it. And that's something that I highly recommend is enabling folks on how to do that detective work up front. And then as you go through the kind of process of building them up, I'd also recommend like in those role play scenarios that you're going to set up in the onboarding process, make sure you have a variety of different personas that they would come up against, and give them both the understanding about those individuals or those roles, but also through the process of the role play, give them some ideas of how you might interact with those people as you get involved with them.
Nice. That's amazing. Any tools you recommend? Like, is it something that, yes, you go to LinkedIn to find it, you map them out, but where to house that or how to maintain that information? Because I can imagine that as reps come and go, you're going to want to retain that as a business versus just having that be the reps information.
Totally. Yeah. A wise person once told me, if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. And so that's one of the things that I've lived by for many moons now, which is you've got to make sure that you're housing your data somewhere. And it's not going to be meaningful for the organization if it doesn't live there. Like you said, rep wins the lottery and they leave the organization and you don't have that in your CRM, you're going to miss out on all that information. From a tool perspective, I think having a visual representation of the kind of stakeholder landscape within your accounts is a gold mine for your teams and for the organization as a whole, because you have to spend less time beating people up to get them to go beyond one contact, because they can see the value in mapping that out and being able to use that as an easy button for managing those forecast conversations or those one-to-one deal reviews, because rather than just spouting out names of all the people and what they're doing in the last interaction with them, you can actually walk people through, here's this individual, here's the other team that's involved, here's the kind of conversations I've had with both. And there are some friction, or there is some friction between these different parties, and what I might do tactically to navigate that. And it also points out blind spots where Dan might be saying to me as a rep, have you thought about the folks within operations and how they might be impacted by this? Have you had those conversations yet? No. Okay, so that's something that you need to do as you get into back into the territory next week and plan things out that way. But I definitely recommend the kind of taking a more holistic or visual representation of that stakeholder landscape.
Nice. That's awesome. Hey guys, so there's a question here from Frederick in the audience. It says, I understand the importance of having data in Salesforce, but how do you make sure your reps buy into the process and use relationship maps in their sales cycle? So Dan, maybe that I'll pass that over to yourself.
Yeah, it's such a good question, because if it's not adopted, that like none of these tools actually make sense, right? So the best way to actually get these tools adopted is by you applying a rigor that it actually brings, that is useful for the individuals that are your sales reps, right? That are actually on the other side. CRM is one of these tools that, unless you're using it, is just becomes a Rolodex, right, of data. And CRM can be way more powerful if you can really follow the process, right? Like understand where you're at in the process, understand the contacts that are actually related to that particular account and opportunity. That also rolls into your own forecast, that it is very important to just keep accurate, because that it's really important just to have a very accurate representation of how you're going to be ending the month, quarter, and year. But it's, to answer your question, it's really about how you operationalize this and show that there's value for your reps on when they're using it. And initially, it really boils down to the carrot and the stick, but it's through operationalizing a process and where the leader needs to help ensure that these tools get fully adopted by the team.
I'd add that one thing I've seen work really well is when you're getting into a one-on-one situation with your team and they want to talk about a deal, pull up that visual representation immediately and go, okay, so you want to talk about this opportunity? Let's go look at it. And it will be very clear if you're doing that on every single opportunity, that they'll, one, understand the importance, and they'll know that that's going to be a basis of how you interact and how you review deals together. So they will change their tune. And like in a past life, I've seen very resistant reps go from only having a single contact on every opportunity to putting like a relationship map type or that visual representation in place, and the average number of contacts on an opportunity after that was implemented grew to between 15 and 25 on average, right? Because people were seeing that, hey, I can get strategic on my opportunities if I'm looking at this and understanding the whole landscape. And then you have those better conversations with your leader, like Dan, where you can actually get feedback and guidance rather than just having to continually regurgitate all the things that are happening and who the names are within the opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, just from my experience with our teams, I think they go through a learning curve, if you will, where they start out not used to it, not used to building this out, not seeing the benefit, like you said, Dan. They don't know yet that it can be impactful. And so they're not doing it. And so, Frederick, that's probably where you're sitting, I'm guessing. But that by doing what Dan and Greg are saying, by having those one-on-one deal reviews with them and just bringing it up, all of a sudden it's going to become very apparent that if your boss is bringing up this list, you better start filling it in. But at the same time, it starts to actually enable you, because now the leader, they're trying to help on so many different deals. Yeah. And there's no way that they can remember all of the people at all of the deals for all of their reps. You'll talk through the names, they'll kind of remember them, but who's this again? Is this the leader or not? Is that the champion or decision maker? And you just waste time going through that. But by representing it, all of a sudden the feedback can be, hey, I can see the last time we interacted with this decision maker was 3 weeks ago. What's the plan? Let's strategize to get back in there. Let's find that material online that Dan was talking about to put something together that's worthy, that we're going to provide them with some value instead of just asking for something in return, so that you can actually get back in front of them and work those multi-channels. That's what I've seen to be most effective. But Dan, I know that you guys do also bigger deal reviews for kind of key deals and even in kind of sales kickoffs. Are those a couple other areas that might help?
Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, I know that you guys do regular kind of larger deal reviews where you're going through the really big, significant ones as a team, kind of challenge them. And also in sales kickoffs and kind of looking at those big deals, how they're going to get through those, get to the numbers.
Yeah, it's for my business. The number is quite high, that we need to find larger opportunities to be able to get to the number, right? And so there's a clear distinction between what we consider run rate opportunities and opportunities that are going to help us, like larger opportunities, strategic opportunities. Typically, run rate opportunities fall below, in our world, below $1 million in threshold. And so those opportunities, they get executed with a different sort of focus and motion. For the larger opportunities in where there is multiple stakeholders that will weigh in into the decision of this proposal or of this opportunity, we conduct this big deal reviews in where it mimics a similar motion of what I explained around the account review, but now it's purely focused on that opportunity, right? And we dig in on the relationship map at a deeper level. There's one question that came in through here that I think it relates nicely to what I'm saying. I think came from Adam. So how often do you recommend sales reps update influence maps? My recommendation is that it becomes a living document, in where if you're not on an in-cycle opportunity, well, there's not a whole lot of priority for you to like update this regularly. But if you're in an in-cycle opportunity, it's important for you to have this updated, because there are changes that happen in an organization, whether a person comes, leaves, and a new player gets interjected. So understanding, at that point in time, if there are new players that we haven't yet considered or that we need to consider. So it becomes a living document that it is best to keep updated to ensure that you have an accurate representation of that point in time of that company.
Yeah, and things can change. I mean, this year, how much do we see change of layoffs and whatnot, that people are no longer there? Your champion's gone, the other players involved are gone, and you're having to start over. Yeah, so I think it's so true that it's got to be kind of a live document that's being updated. Not to mention the fact that as you progress through the deal cycle, there's going to be more people involved or different people involved, right? You're not talking to procurement right off the bat, but hopefully you get there closer to the end and you want to map them out as well.
Yeah, or new processes that just have come into place, right? Like last year, there's a lot of I ran into zero-based budgeting process, which means that every single new expense needs to be scrutinized and not taken to account what was previously, was allocated to that team. Is just it gets reviewed from the bottom up.
Nice. Mm-hmm. I see another question that just came in from Frederick again. Why not use an org chart over a relationship map?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I can answer it.
Yeah, I can take a quick one on that. I think we've seen the contact roles serve as an org chart often within our opportunities, but I think where it tends to fall flat is just that you have a list of people, so you don't necessarily get that kind of visual representation to understand who reports to who. How do these teams interact with each other, or how related are they? And further to that, what's really valuable is understanding the relationships that exist between those people. If people aren't getting along and you're banking on this one person to help you kind of get things across the line in influencing someone else within the organization, and they don't get along, boy, you're going to be in a tough spot. So you're going to have to, by being able to understand that, it just adds so much more value to your view of the kind of stakeholder landscape.
To add to what you just said, Greg, in my opinion, the main difference between an org chart and influence map is that an org chart just provides you with a hierarchical structure of the organization, but it doesn't really give you a contextual understanding of the influence of every single person as it pertains to the buying cycle of software, right? So that's very different. An org chart you could have a very high level title, but as I mentioned, titles can be deceiving in nature. Often some people, some organizations devote quite a bit of responsibility to even managers, right? So sometimes managers could have the ability for them to sign up to a certain level of dollar value that many software organizations will be quite happy to even grab 25% of that particular budget, right? So I think it's important not to infer that just because you have a big title and where you sit within that organization hierarchy, that you are going to be a player that is going to influence your outcome.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, because you're right. Some of the higher ups lean on people that might be below them in the org chart for those decisions. But also sometimes the higher up execs actually don't want to be communicated with, and you can actually be off-putting or start to hurt your deal cycle by going after the people that are too high up because they've delegated that responsibility to others. Yeah, so being able to map that out, being able to recognize who the people that matter, what are those relationships between them? Because you're right, if two people have competing priorities and this one's a decision maker and your champion is over here, you want to know that so you can be able to avoid those landmines. Yeah, no, that's great, Dan. Thank you. I have a question for you guys. So we all know that being multi-threaded is beneficial, right? And that all too often we're single-threaded, and that can change throughout the deal cycle. But what are some tactics that you guys have that would help sales reps who might be single-threaded to get multi-threaded, to actually get in touch with other people in a positive way and not a negative way? Maybe I'll pass it over to Greg, or feel free to defer.
Yeah, I think you want to spend, like, if this is a new muscle for everyone, we want to make it fun. And so what I've seen work really well is incent people to do it. Get some sort of contest or spiff running around it where you spend a quarter or two building the muscle memory and getting people going on it. I think that helps things along, because if you come in with the whip, you're not necessarily going to get the reaction or the activity that you're looking for. From my own perspective, like what I've coached people on in the past has been centered around curiosity. Get curious, ask the questions, unlock your inner 4-year-old, right? Like, why is this important to the organization? Why are you chasing that goal? Who else does this impact? Why would they be excited about this? And by just the natural course of having those conversations, you will open up the door to new relationships, to new stakeholders. You could find people who will have additional budget to chip in, or find a new set of people who might benefit from it, and then you have new licenses or more services or whatever it might be. So getting curious is definitely at the forefront of helping people get that broader understanding or the multi-threaded view.
Yeah. For me, probably the only thing to add there is, and my recommendation, there's a difference between being on the forecast and in the forecast. My recommendation for every single leader is to be in the forecast and to partner with your team build trust with them. I think that's the most important part, right? Like building trust is a foundation of having effective collaboration and understanding how together as a team, you guys will be able to move this deal forward. So, all sales leaders, we have a certain level of expertise that is our responsibility for us to syndicate to our reps. And it is through the collaboration that will allow us to make recommendations for our reps to get out of their comfort zone, right? And to reach out to that certain person that they haven't reached out to, or that individual that they met who they knew that they needed to make a connection with, but it's important for them just to remind them again to do it. So it's and that really boils down to just being in the forecast and ensuring that you can support your reps to do the things that they're not natural at doing.
Nice. And so I love that, the pushing them to get out of their comfort zone and whatnot. For the rep, is it really just about kind of making the ask to whoever they're talking to already to introduce them to other people? Or is it trying to get in touch with them in other avenues?
I think it really depends. If you have a champion that can make a warm connection, leverage that champion. But don't just rely on the champion, right? Like you can use that champion for them to coach you, because maybe that champion wants to stay independent from making that connection, right? And you got to respect that. So use your champions to either make the warm introduction or to coach you on how to reach out to this individual, and find their email address, craft a compelling message, one that relates to them, and follow up.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a huge fan and advocate of trying to get warm introductions from people versus the cold outreach. So we try to leave the cold outreach to last. Partners can be a massive way in, particularly when you're in the situation. We've all been there, right? Where you're talking to one person and they're great and they're a champion of yours, but at the same time, they're not the person that's going to get the job done. And they don't seem to be willing to introduce you to them. Partners, I find, is a great way to make that introduction without it being awkward, right? Because if you go over this person's head that you've been talking to for months, it can be awkward. But by getting that warm intro, say, hey, I just got introduced to your boss. It's great. We're meeting next week, sort of thing. And now it's not awkward. The other thing that I always recommend, and I love what you said, Greg, is get curious at the beginning, unlock that inner 4-year-old, is when you ask early in a deal cycle, who are the players involved, who are going to be the decision makers, can we get intros? None of it's awkward, right? Right at the beginning of that deal cycle, you can ask whatever you want because it's the first time you've ever met. But the longer that deal goes on, the more you've talked to this person, now making that ask, who are the people, can you introduce me, becomes more and more awkward, almost linearly, the longer you've talked to them.
Yes.
And so make that ask early. Yeah. So guys, okay, now that we've talked about, okay, who are the people that matter and whatnot, in every deal, it seems like, well, not maybe every deal, but in a lot of deals, you'll have meetings where you get swamped with people. There'll be 17 people on this meeting, etc. Is it important to map out everybody? Is it important to have everyone on that to retain them so you know who's who?
Yes, it is very important.
Okay.
Capturing all that information, I think it's a responsibility of every single sales representative, because we are the data stewards of the interactions, right, that we're having with our customers. So yes, put everything in the CRM.
Okay. Candidly, I'm surprised. I thought you were going to say sometimes it becomes noise. But okay, so if you want everyone in the CRM, how do you map that out? Like, does it become overwhelming in these large deals, particularly if it's, I can't remember how you phrase it, a run rate deal, I think, Dan?
Yes,
it might not be as big. Yeah.
I may have misunderstood your question. I think every single contact that we're interacting with that falls within that particular account should reside in the CRM. Now, from a relationship map, I think it's important to map out the important players. And that I do agree that it doesn't make sense for you to trying to find a better word, but to pollute what you need to hone in on, right? And who are the players that you do not have a relationship with, and who you need to establish a better cadence with. But from a standpoint of just like making sure that you have all the data captured in the CRM, yes, it's very important to put everybody there.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, because I can imagine that in as many deals as you're in, it depends how many deals. If you're a strategic rep and you only have 3 or 4 deals, kind of thing, it's easy, and you probably do want everyone because it's this mass organization. But in the smaller you get, the SME mid-market, lots of deals, fewer players, probably less important to map out everybody on every deal because it just becomes too overwhelming. Now, guys, I know that we're getting a little bit shorter on time. We want to leave more time for questions, albeit we've had a bunch come up already. Yeah, so maybe we'll open it up to the floor and see if there's any others. I did see one, Daniel. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it. It says, I spend much time IDing power players, but it takes so many sales motion steps. What is Salesforce doing to help reduce the pains of reps having to update Salesforce? I've seen Einstein GPT, but anything else that's working I can use as well. And yeah, I don't know, maybe it'll be a safe harbor comment. I don't know what Salesforce is allowed to say here.
Yeah, I will say safe harbor on that. But let me just read your question again, Harry. So I spent too much time at the Empower players, but this takes many sales motion steps. What is Salesforce doing to help reduce the pains of having reps to update Salesforce? Well, there are, not so that I'm not sharing things that I'm not supposed to share. There are certain tools within Salesforce that just allow you to automate the inclusion of a particular contact in the CRM. There's, if you're using Outlook, if you're using Gmail, there are certain connectors that allows you to, with a click of a button, bring the particular person and create a contact record inside of Salesforce. This is just out-of-the-box functionality that Salesforce provides, and is through configuration versus actually custom coding that can be done. So there's ways in how you can automate that particular process.
Nice. And I'll put out a shameless plug here, Harry. So we have one of our products is an automation engine. But what caught us off guard was that one of our customers, George at Coveo, what he has done is used it to set up rules to say, hey, if we've noticed that there's been a lot of interaction between people and ourselves while there's an open opportunity, they set up the automation to automatically add that person as a contact role on an opportunity. And so all of a sudden there becomes a lot more, in his case, campaign attribution for marketing, but for the sales rep, it helps automatically put people on there instead of having to do it manually. And then it can be a little smarter, right? So if you do have 700 people, or that's probably an exaggeration, but if you have 70 contacts at an account, you probably don't want all 70 on your influence map, your relationship map. But that if you can do it through those people that you're seeing activity with, it can really help out.
It's a great suggestion. I like that.
All right. Well, guys, it doesn't look like we have too many more questions, but maybe we can ask you guys, what are the takeaways that you guys have? If you could leave everyone with a few nuggets of advice to help in their journey with navigating to get to the power players in any deal, what would those be?
I can go. So I think there's a few things to consider. Obviously, you've got to put in the time is the first and foremost piece around this, and realize that there's really no silver bullet. Systems and applications can help you, but they won't do it on their own. There's a kind of cultural shift that you may have to go through to shift your team's thinking as a whole. And to get there, you have to lead the change, right? You have to be the driver to make the change and reinforce it across all the leaders in your business to make sure that it's sticking, like we were discussing earlier. And I think the final piece here is make sure as you're considering a process around this for your teams as a whole, that you consider the different types of deals that you're managing. Not all deals are created equal. Not all deals will need you to go to the extent that you might need to for your biggest and baddest deals. So just make sure you're taking that into consideration as you establish a path forward.
Nice. That's awesome.
Great ones, Greg. Yeah, I have two. I think the most important one is make sure that you are developing meaningful relationships with stakeholders. Focus on building an authentic and mutually beneficial relationship with these key players. I think that goes a long way. So just show genuine interest in their needs and challenges. At the end of the day, they're human beings. So the more you can connect with them at a human level, I think that will help everyone be more successful versus just having a vested interest, right, on making sure that you got to close your opportunity by a certain date, right? Those are just not very tangible and meaningful relationships. And then the last one, adapt to a change in dynamics. We're in really dynamic times today, so just ensuring that you're reassessing what worked in the past and what needs to be applied in the future. And with that comes into what I already mentioned, just reassess that relationship map, because there's changes in the landscape, and just identifying new players that come on board. It will just keep you guys on your toes.
That's amazing. Thank you, guys. A couple that I took away from learning from you guys today. One was that weekly homework or pitches when you're enabling and onboarding the team as something that people probably aren't doing today. I think that was huge. The other, Greg, you said was unlock your inner 4-year-old, get curious and ask those questions, ask them early, because if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. Right. I love that. Yeah. So those are some of my takeaways. Some of my suggestions: if you're a sales leader when you're driving your one-on-ones, your deal reviews, get people to bring that map up. That's what Dan had recommended, because that's allowing you, one, to see who the players are, but allow you to actually coach instead of just try to discover who all these people are again. And coach people to make that ask early. Try and get into the decision makers as early as you can to create those relationships. And if you're a rep and they haven't coached you to do this stuff and you're listening here, start to do it yourself. Show off to your leaders, show them that you're doing this, and holy smokes, your career will accelerate pretty quickly. Yeah, those are my takeaways.
And I mean, there's really nothing left for me to say. You guys said everything that I took away from it. So absolutely incredible, guys.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you so much for having us. I know we're only a couple minutes out, but if anyone wants to find out more or listen to the recording, you can come check us out at tractioncomplete.com, and we'll make sure to send out a deal review checklist after the session to everyone who's registered, so that you can both get access to this recording, but also access to a checklist of stuff that you can run through. So thank you very much, Dan, Greg, Gina. Thank you, guys. This has been a real pleasure. Appreciate all your insight.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much. And to all of our attendees, thank you so much for joining today. We truly appreciate you guys. The recap will be up on revgenius.com/events. You can sign up there to watch the recap. If you have coworkers that registered that weren't able to attend, they will receive recap and email as well. Dan, Greg, David, Traction Complete at Salesforce, thank you guys so much for joining us this afternoon. This has been absolutely incredible, and I wish everybody a wonderful and relaxing afternoon.
Thanks, guys. Bye now.